Welcome to Pyramid Plus Approach Session 1. This is introduction to the Pyramid Plus approach. Before you begin watching the video, please take a moment and open up your Google Doc and answer the first reflection question on your Google Doc. Why do you think it's important to teach young children social and emotional skills, and how will having those skills help them to be more successful in school and in life? So take a moment, and when you're done, come back and we will begin the presentation. As I said, this is Session 1, Introduction to the Pyramid Plus approach. It is basically an overview of all of the material that we'll be following and an introduction to the structure of how we believe it is best to provide social and emotional skill instruction to young children. Before we begin, I'd like to offer a special thank you to the Pyramid Plus funders. First of all, the Department of Human Services has several divisions that support this work. The Division of Child Care, the Division for Developmental Disabilities, the Early Intervention Program Part C, the Division of Behavioral Health, the Division of Child Welfare, the Colorado Health Foundation, the Temple Hoyne Buell Foundation, and Mile High United Way. In addition, I'd like to thank Mile High Early Learning for providing the support that's needed to provide this special kind of training to early childhood teachers. Our agenda during this session, we will first of all talk about our learning objectives. There will be an activity called Stand on the Line, introducing the Pyramid Plus Center itself, a discussion of how Pyramid Plus approach actually fits into your teaching and your classroom. We'll review some statistics of the prevalence and impact of challenging behaviors in young children. We'll do a quick overview of the Pyramid Plus approach training so that you'll see all the wonderful things you have in store. And then we'll ask you to complete a document called Thought Seeds. So let's get started. Here's our learning objectives for today. You will gain an overview of the origins, purpose, and goals of the Pyramid Plus Center. You will receive some data which supports the need to address social emotional competence in young children. And then finally, you will have a brief overview of the Pyramid Plus approach training. Each time you come to a Pyramid Plus session, we will be following some ground rules. Those would be established normally if you were in a group session. However, we will wait to do that sort of thing until you are with a group. Session handouts will be reviewed as we go through each session. So here's our very first activity. Now I would like you to, again, open up your Google Doc and answer question number 2. Describe what you know about the pyramid model. Are you brand new, somewhat familiar, or extremely familiar? And why do you want to learn more about teaching children social and emotional skills? Take a moment to do that and then come back and we will continue our training. So what is the Pyramid Plus Center? Have you ever heard of the Pyramid Plus Center? If so, have you ever used it? It is at the Colorado Center for Social Emotional Competence and Inclusion. And it was located at the University of Colorado at Denver and is now being moved to Healthy Child Care Colorado. The goal of the Pyramid Plus Center is to increase the use of evidence-based early childhood social and emotional and inclusive practices in early care and education settings, including family, child care, and in-home providers. You can pull out handout 1.1, which is on page 21 of your handouts for this session. And that will give you some ideas of what Pyramid Plus is really all about. First, there was the pyramid model, which was a product of Cephal and Taxi. You'll get very familiar with all of these terms as we go through the training. What Pyramid Plus does is it incorporates evidence-based inclusion practices into the pyramid model, which was already in existence for all children. We added information from some tools called Special Quest, Prevent, Teach, and Reinforce for young children, and learning experiences, and an alternative program for preschoolers and parents that is often called LEAP, as well as bringing in materials from the building blocks that are available on the Head Start Inclusion website. What are the goals of the Pyramid Plus Center? First of all, we want to support state collaboration. We want to work on this issue from a very holistic viewpoint, and we want to be sure that we are partnering with everyone else who is interested in this topic and is a stakeholder in the outcomes for this work that we're doing. We also liaise with national centers that work on challenging behaviors in young children. We do provide training and technical assistance for everyone in the community who is providing childcare for early childhood. There is certification available if you'd like to be a Pyramid Plus coach or trainer. You can get certified to do that. They also provide certification of Pyramid Plus programs. In other words, programs where Pyramid Plus is being implemented with high fidelity. They have already established very rigorous evaluation systems that provide data that drive program decisions, help us plan for sustainability, and make sure that our management is very effective. I mentioned fidelity a moment ago. So what is fidelity? Fidelity of implementation is the extent to which an intervention is implemented in comparison to its intended design. In other words, how close are we coming to actually providing training, providing materials, providing resources for teachers that will give them the support that they need to provide the kind of teaching that we like to see in Pyramid Plus approach programs. Fidelity measures and the tools actually report the degree of implementation variance. In other words, how close are we actually getting to the intended design of the founders of Pyramid Plus approach. Another term that you will hear a great deal as we go through this training is evidence-based practices. And the way that we define evidence-based practices in Pyramid Plus is interventions and supports that have research documenting their effectiveness. They must be approaches that are linked to positive outcomes for children and families. And they are practices that have been demonstrated as effective with multiple research studies that had similar outcomes. In the state of Colorado, we have a state team that is supporting the implementation of Pyramid Plus. If you pull out handout 1.2 on page 23 from your handouts, you'll see all of the agencies that are represented on the team that are rolling out and supporting communities in implementing the Pyramid Plus approach. One of the most important facets of the work that we do at the Pyramid Plus approach, with the Pyramid Plus approach, is make sure that the work we're doing is sustainable. In other words, it will continue to support children for many years to come. As the Pyramid Plus Center, a tree was selected as a symbol for Pyramid Plus sustainability. A tree has an unseen root system underground, larger than the tree above ground. We thought of our funders and state leadership team as the unseen support that feeds our work. At the base of the tree trunk is the Pyramid Plus Center, which supports all of the programs that are launched from the center. The Pyramid Plus implementation communities, outreach partners, certified demonstration sites, certified coaches and trainers who work throughout the state and have direct contact with children and families in family homes, health, mental health, early care and education, and early intervention settings. The interconnectedness of a tree with trunk, branches, limbs, and leaves, all supported by a vast root system, represents an image for sustainability of this very important work that we do. I'm going to ask you to take a moment and read this quote. It is tempting when a child exhibits challenging behavior to immediately want to fix the problem. Sometimes, in our rush to fix the problem, we actually support the continuation of the challenging behavior. A lot of times, society sees challenging behavior as a sign that the child is willful and non-compliant, and that the best response from the adult is to assert authority over the child. I'd like you to take just a moment and think about how you feel about this question. What do you think of this quote? How does it make you feel? Do you agree with these views of challenging behavior? Do you think it's appropriate for adults to assert their authority? When is asserting authority okay or not okay? Or on the flip side of that, do you think the challenging behavior is related to a skill development problem that the child is experiencing that can be influenced by the teacher response and potentially some intervention, some direct attempts, some very intentional attempts to teach the child the missing skills? Now we're going to go into reviewing some of the data that is so important. It supports the fact that our work is important for young children. So we are going to ask you right now to pull out handout 1.3, which is on page 25 of your handouts for this session. Let's take a look at handout 1.3 to see if we can find some answers for this question. Pretty impressive statistics, aren't they, in that handout? It makes you understand just how important your work with young children can be. So if you look at the next handout, handout 1.4, which is on page 29 of your handouts for this session, we look a little bit more closely at what is likely to happen to a child who is exhibiting challenging behavior. They're likely to suffer all of these things: peer rejection, unpleasant interactions with family and teachers, predictable and very consistent school failure, and lack of connecting to their own communities. It's pretty miserable. And it's even more miserable if the child is also coping at the same time with a disability of one sort or another. Here's just a few snippets of the data that is available. Approximately 10 to 15% of all typically developing preschool children have chronic, mild to moderate levels of behavior problems. So 10 to 15% of all children have behavior issues. Children who are poor, however, are much more likely. Almost 1/3 of children at the lower economic status are likely to develop behavior problems with prevalence rates of 30%. Wow. Why do you think being poor correlates so strongly with exhibiting challenging behaviors? It's an interesting question. Here's another one. Faculty in higher education early childhood programs report that their graduates are least likely to be prepared to work with children with persistently challenging behavior. In other words, we're not doing a very good job of preparing our teachers ahead of time to work with these children who do have challenging behaviors. And I might add that in this time of COVID, challenging behaviors are even probably much more prevalent than they ever were before. In addition, preschool children are 3 times more likely to be expelled than children in grades kindergarten through 12. Wow, 3 times as likely to be expelled. In other words, excluded from the only source of help that they may have available to them. It's a problem on a number of levels. The child is much more likely to have ongoing poor outcomes throughout their lives once they've been expelled from preschool. They may end up in some sort of poor quality or unsafe type of childcare setting due to lack of choices that are available to them. Lack of parental support leads to high levels of frustration, and the child may end up being abused or neglected because the parent can't cope with the child's behaviors. Finally, that child is likely to internalize violent behaviors unless they receive early intervention. We're talking about preschool here. So it's important for us to be able to be, first of all, prepared to deal with those behaviors when they occur so that the child does not have to be expelled. And secondly, to have policies and procedures in place that will help the family as well as the teachers to deal with this child's behaviors. Here's some statistics that the first time I read them, I was shocked. I had no idea. Black students represent only 18% of preschool enrollment. However, they represent 42% of preschool students suspended once and 48% of students suspended more than once. So we do have a race and equity issue in our early childhood programs. Black students are very much more likely to be expelled than any of their peers. And here's another thing. We have a gender problem as well, a gender equity problem. Boys represent 54% of the preschool population, but they represent 79% of children suspended once and 82% of children suspended multiple times. Girls who are Black, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander represent a larger percentage of out-of-school suspensions within their racial or ethnic group than girls within any of the other racial or ethnic groups. So you can see here, we do have a race and a gender equity issue as far as the way that we react to challenging behaviors exhibited by children in our programs. Here's a chart that kind of lays all of this out. And again, the statistics are shocking. They are really, really shocking. You can see that the out-of-school suspensions, white children represent 43% of all overall enrollment. 43% of children enrolled in preschool programs are white. And yet, a little more than half of that number are represented in out-of-school suspensions. So they're less likely to be suspended than Black students, who only represent 18% of the enrollment and yet receive 48% of the out-of-school suspensions of multiple times. In addition, students who do have disabilities, students that are actually served by IDEA and have diagnosed special needs, represent 22% of the preschool enrollment. They also represent 19% of the students suspended once and so 17% of the students suspended more than once. So students with disabilities have, also have a great likelihood of being expelled. Another group that suffers in this situation is English language learners. They represent 12% of preschool children and 11% of students suspended once, 9% of students suspended more than once. So if a child is learning the English language, they're also highly likely to be expelled at least once. However, it's not all doom and gloom. If children are enrolled and remain enrolled in high-quality ECE programs, they're much more likely to have positive outcomes as adults. They're likely to complete higher level of education, have higher earnings, be in better health, and be in more stable relationships, and they're much less likely to commit a crime or be incarcerated. So in handout 1.5, which is on page 33 of your handouts for this session, it's an article called Recommended Practices Linking Social Development and Behavior to School Readiness. This is a very interesting article to read and well worth taking the time to review. What this article outlines is some of the positive outcomes that we can achieve if we address challenging behaviors early on and do so in a consistent and intentional manner. All of these positive outcomes are possible if a child receives intervention early enough. Now we're going to review the Pyramid Plus approach training curriculum. We're going to find out what's going to be coming up in the next few months as we learn more about this curriculum. For this review, there are a number of different handouts that you can pull up. Handout 1.6 lists all the acronyms that we use and some websites where resources are available. This is on page 35 of your handouts for this time. Handout 1.7 is on page 37 of your handouts, and it's called the Pyramid Model for Supporting Social Emotional Competence in Infants and Young Children. And it's a fact sheet that tells you more about the pyramid model, which was the basis for the Pyramid Plus approach. Handout 1.8, which begins on page 41, is some CEFL website resources. And CEFL stands for the Center on the Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning. And it lists all kinds of resources that are available to you right there on that website. And the website address is listed here on your screen right now. And handout 1.9, which actually begins on page 43, again, is a much more detailed list of all of the resources that are available on the CEFL website. And then finally, handout 1.10 is a taxi product guide that has all kinds of wonderful stuff in it when you are ready for further reading. That begins on page 46 of your handouts for this session. The pyramid model is illustrated by this diagram of a pyramid. And when we go through the curriculum for Pyramid Plus approach, we are going to be basing a lot of our discussions on these things. There's an effective workforce. In other words, we feel like that needs to be the foundation for all of our other efforts. Then there's the promotion, which is offered to all children, high quality supportive environments, as well as nurturing and responsive relationships. In addition, we move up as children have more intense needs. These are children offered to children at risk, targeted social emotional supports. And these are very intentional teaching strategies that are available to all children in your classroom and can prevent the development of challenging behavior in most children. However, there will be some children with more intensive support needs that will need more intensive intervention. These children are the ones that get sorted out, and those are the ones we will discuss approaches for at the very top of the pyramid. So we start off with the basic universal practices for all children. We move up to the preventative strategies that we offer to all children. And then we move to much more intensive intervention for the few children who do not respond to any of the other strategies at the bottom of the pyramid. Here are some of the expectations of the pyramid model. We want to make sure that all instruction is inclusive and it occurs in inclusive settings. In other words, when we are offering these targeted social emotional approaches, we want to make sure we are offering them to all children. Each level of the pyramid builds on the lower levels. So we need to have an effective workforce, for example, in place before we can even move on to building responsive relationships or planning for nurturing environments. The systematic part of the strategies becomes much more intense and frequent as you move up the pyramid. It's also very effective and efficient because it is planned and it's based on research-based strategies. And finally, families are our partners throughout this entire process, and we look at them as members of the team dealing with the child. Now I'm going to show you a video about the pyramid model. It's a rather long video, 27 minutes, and after you complete watching the video, pause this training and go to your Google Doc and answer question 3, pyramid model video. After watching this video, what are your thoughts? What would you like to learn more about?
Many decades of research have demonstrated that a prevention approach to emotional and behavioral concerns can yield a lifetime of benefits. The inspiration for the pyramid model comes from the public health model of promotion, prevention, and intervention. Similar to the public health model, we describe the need for universal, secondary, and tertiary interventions. At the universal level, we include the practices needed to ensure the promotion of the social development of all children. At the next level, the prevention level, we include the provision of targeted supports to children with social emotional delays who are at risk for challenging behavior. Finally, the tertiary level of the pyramid describes the need to provide individualized and intensive interventions to the very small number of children with persistent challenges. The pyramid model is supported by an effective workforce. The goal of the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations is to provide training and technical assistance to professionals, programs, and states in order to build the capacity to implement the pyramid model. We use implementation science and data decision-making as we guide professionals, programs, and states, and we guide them to use implementation science as they implement and scale up the pyramid model within their program. In the pyramid model, we place the provision of nurturing and responsive relationships with children, families, and colleagues as the foundation for all other practices, as well as the universal conditions that are necessary for social competence promotion and behavior guidance. The focus on relationships puts primary importance on the caregiver or teacher engaging in responsive and positive interactions with children and the development of partnerships with families. Moreover, it includes the critical importance of collaboration and teaming that is essential to the provision of high-quality early childhood programs and early intervention services in natural environments. In their early years, children exist within a web of relationships among parents, teachers, and other caring adults in their lives, and eventually peers. This web supplies the context within which healthy social-emotional growth and the capacity to form strong affirmative relationships with adults and peers develop. The relationships level of the pyramid includes practices such as actively supporting children's engagement, embedding instruction within children's routine, planned, and play activities, responding to children's conversations, promoting the communicative attempts of children with language delays and disabilities, and providing encouragement to promote skill learning and development. When providing support to very young children and their families within early intervention programs, this level of the pyramid includes developing strong collaborative partnerships with families and other caregivers, providing support to caregivers in responding to the infants and toddlers' needs, and guiding caregivers in establishing responsive and nurturing interactions that will promote the child's social development. The second category of universal promotion practice is the provision of supportive environments. Within home and community settings, this level of the pyramid refers to the provision of predictable and supportive environments and family interactions that will promote the child's social and emotional development. Universal practices for children with or at risk for delays or disabilities include receiving instruction and support within inclusive environments that offer the rich social context that is essential to the development of social skills and peer relationships. The universal level of the pyramid refers to the design of classrooms and programs that meet the standards of high-quality early education and the recommended practices of the Division of Early Childhood of the Council for Exceptional Children. This includes the implementation of a curriculum that fosters all areas of child development, including social and emotional skills, the use of developmentally and culturally appropriate and effective teaching approaches, the design of safe physical environments that promote active learning and appropriate behavior, providing positive and explicit guidance to children on rules and expectations, supporting, guiding, and teaching social skills, and the design of schedules and activities that maximize child engagement and learning. The secondary or prevention level of the pyramid includes the provision of explicit instruction in social skills and emotional regulation. In early childhood programs, all children will require adult guidance and instruction to learn how to express their emotions appropriately, play cooperatively with peers, and use social problem-solving strategies. However, for some children, it will be necessary to provide systematic and focused instruction to teach them discrete social-emotional skills. Children might need more focused instruction on skills such as identifying and expressing emotions, self-regulation, social problem-solving, initiating and maintaining interactions, cooperative responding, strategies for handling disappointment and anger, and friendship skills. Families in early intervention programs might need guidance and coaching from their early intervention provider for how to promote their child's development of targeted social and emotional skills. Families of infants and young toddlers might need guidance and support for helping the very young child regulate emotions or stress and understand the emotions of others. When children have persistent challenging behavior that is not responsive to interventions at the previous levels, comprehensive interventions are developed to resolve problem behavior and support the development of new skills. At this level of the pyramid model, individualized positive behavioral support, or PBS, is used to develop and implement a plan of intensive, individualized intervention. The focus of this process is the individual design of a behavior support plan that can be applied within all natural environments by the child's everyday caregivers and is focused on supporting the child in developing new skills. The process begins with convening the team that will develop and implement the child's support plan. At the center of the team is the family and child's teacher or other primary caregivers. The next step is to conduct a functional assessment to gain a better understanding of the factors that are related to the child's engagement in challenging behavior. The functional assessment ends with a development of hypotheses about the functions of the child's challenging behavior. These hypotheses are used for the development of a behavioral support plan. The behavior support plan includes prevention strategies to address the triggers of challenging behavior, replacement skills that are alternatives to the challenging behavior, and strategies that ensure challenging behavior is not reinforced or maintained. The behavior support plan is designed to address home, community, and classroom routines where challenging behavior is occurring. In this process, the team also considers supports to the family and strategies to address broader ecological factors that affect the family and their support of the child. The pyramid model offers professionals and programs with a framework of practices that address the skill promotion and intervention needs of all young children, children who may be at risk of developing social-emotional delays, and those with persistent behavioral challenges. On this website, you will find guidance, materials, tools, presentations, family information, and other resources to assist in the installation and sustainable implementation of this approach. We hope that you will consider becoming a frequent visitor to the NCPMI website as we continue to develop and disseminate information and new materials and post opportunities for training and technical assistance.
Okay, so after watching this video, please take a few moments and answer question number 3 on your Google Doc, and then we'll continue the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, using the Pyramid Plus approach includes not only all the wonderful resources that were put into the original pyramid model, but some additional resources that focus on the inclusive aspect of providing skills for young children with challenging behaviors. These are listed on your screen, and this is a list of websites for the evidence-based practices that are included in this Pyramid Plus approach. So now we'll review these briefly, individually. Handout 1.11 is on page 47 of your handouts for this session. And it's the Special Quest approach to professional development on inclusion for young children with disabilities and their families. Special Quest, Birth to 5, is actually an inclusion model which promotes successful professional development and systems change for early childhood education programs. And it does really promote inclusion for children with disabilities. The next website that we're going to look at briefly is Building Blocks. And Building Blocks is an aspect of the Head Start Center for Inclusion website. And this is particularly appropriate for use in environments where we are working with toddlers through preschool-age children. It contains a lot of curriculum modifications that will support all children and help teachers to embed learning into routines. It's very much individualized and child-focused. And the third website that I had mentioned, or the third source of resources that I had mentioned, was the LEAP program, Learning Experiences, an alternative program for preschoolers and parents. It's an enhanced evidence-based set of practices that were really originally developed to work with young children with autism or on the autism spectrum. And there are some strategies in LEAP that are very effective with all children, not just children who also have autism. An offshoot of LEAP, or something that was created as part of LEAP, was Prevent, Teach, Reinforce for Young Children. This is a systematic approach that builds positive behavior support for young children. It really is a very collaborative approach and requires a team be established, including the family, as well as all of the stakeholders that are working with the child in the care setting or the school. And it does provide amazingly positive child outcomes. So now we're going to move on to discussing exactly what the Pyramid Plus approach involves. And as you can see on the far left side of our screen here, this is where we have added in all these additional resources to what was already there in the pyramid model. So here is a chart that will help you to understand the difference between the pyramid model and the Pyramid Plus approach. There is a handout 1.12, which is on page 49, that's available to you in your handouts for this session, that goes into these details for you. Our Pyramid Plus approach training is actually broken down into 18 sessions. This is the first session out of all of those. And this is the way the framework is actually built. We're going to do some introductory work at the bottom of the pyramid. We're going to be talking about all of the things that we feel will promote having an effective workforce in place to be working, in other words, well-trained teachers to be, and hopefully parents as well, to be working with these children who are exhibiting challenging behaviors. There are two handouts that are related to this. 1.13 is just the visual. That's on page 51 of your handouts. It does detail all of the different pieces of this approach that we will be talking about over the next few months. And handout 1.14 is actually on page 53, and it outlines all of the sessions and the learning objectives for each one of the sessions that we will be discussing. So in the yellow tier at the bottom of the pyramid, where we are really focusing on preparing an effective workforce and making sure that teachers and parents have all of the supports and training that they need, and all the tools that they need to be successful in supporting these young children. Session 1, 2, 3, 4, and then again in session 10 and 11, we talk a little bit more about systemic supports that need to be in place to make sure that everyone has the tools they need to support children. This is just a preview of a chart that will be discussed further in session 3. This talks about managing complex change and what's needed to make it happen. You need to have all of these elements in place in order for change to happen, for change to be effective. If you're missing any one of these elements, the change is much less likely to occur. And as I said, we'll talk more about this in session 3. Moving on to the blue tier of the pyramid, we are looking at those resources that are used to promote social and emotional skill development in all children. These are supports that are in place that benefit everyone in the classroom. First of all, we want to be developing nurturing and responsive relationships, and we want to make sure that our environment is not contributing to any issues that may be promoting challenging behavior. So this is sessions 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 will be focused on this topic. And now I would like to play a video of Rosemary Allen, who is a longtime advocate of high quality early childhood education in the state of Colorado. And Rosemary is going to briefly discuss the importance of the pyramid model.
The pyramid model helps our caregivers address positive social emotional behaviors and development simply because it teaches us who children are and what to expect and what their needs are. So when you know overall child development and what to expect at different developmental ages, then you don't take it personally. You know that when you call an 18-month-old, they're going to run in the opposite direction. So you know that 18-month-old is not running away from you because they're being disrespectful or obstinate. They're running away because that's their job. The same with a 2-year-old. When they say no, it's their job to say no. So if you know what to expect, then you know how to prepare. And when you look at that first level of the pyramid model, when it talks about interactions and then environment, interactions is everything. It's everything. As adults, we know when we're being judged, and we know when people don't like us. What makes us think it's any different with children? And I think children are even more aware because they don't have the filters that we have in order to really kind of gauge it. So the pyramid model, from the very beginning, it teaches us about ourselves. I honestly believe that the key to addressing challenging behaviors is addressing our own. It's really not what the children are doing, because children will be children. When children get upset, they hit, bite, kick, scratch. And unfortunately, when adults get upset, they do the same thing. So the key is our response to it. It's managing our own behaviors, because children have an excuse. They've only been on the planet a little while, maybe 2 years on the planet. The first year is just self-aware. But after we've been here for 51 years, that I should know how to manage my own behaviors, which is really the key in helping children to manage theirs. I love the first part of the pyramid when it talks about the hot buttons, because what may seem like negative behavior to one teacher may be perfectly okay to another, and it's our own experiences that causes us to label behaviors. And what the pyramid model does, it helps us to get in touch with our own hot buttons. It helps us to really look at our own interactions, and then to build positive interactions for the children, while at the same time building an environment, developing an environment that's safe and wonderful, and that's just, you know what it is? We build an environment that screams out to children, this is all for you. This is your place and you're safe here. The pyramid model helps our caregivers.
So now you know. That is the intent of the Pyramid Plus approach. And Rosemary brings up so many of the important aspects of using the strategies, the tools, the techniques that you will be learning over the next 17 sessions to help children with challenging behaviors. So now we're going to briefly continue to discuss some of the factors that we know contribute to more successful skill development for these children. First of all, none of it's going to happen without having nurturing relationships with them. If you do not have a relationship developed with a child who is exhibiting challenging behaviors, your chances of successfully intervening in those challenging behaviors are very low. Human relationships are really the key to everything that we're going to be talking about as we go through the rest of the material. A child who's got strong connections with the other humans in their world is going to be a much happier, well-balanced child. A child who is disconnected from all of those wonderful supports is likely to be a very unhappy child and one who really struggles to be successful in their life. One thing we need to remember is that it takes two people to make a connection or to cut off a connection. And in session 5, we're going to be talking a little bit about something called hot buttons. And we know that there are certain things, certain behaviors that really push our buttons and make us feel uncomfortable. For some of us, it's a child who is being disrespectful. For others, it is a child who is whining. For others, it is a child who acts out in violent ways or hurts their peers. All of these are really upsetting to most of us. So in session 5, we're going to be talking about how those hot buttons are really a key thing for us to be aware of as the adult in the equation when we're trying to establish a relationship. Here is a very interesting quote from Carl Jung. If there's anything that we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it is not something that could be better changed in ourselves. So what he's saying here basically is that we also need to be considering changing our reaction to the behavior before we expect the child to be able to change that behavior themselves. Here's my favorite quote in all of Pyramid Plus approach. This is Yuri Bronfenbrenner. He says, every child needs one person who is completely crazy about him. And the cool part is that most children get that from a parent. However, some children don't get it for whatever reason. Their parent or their caregiver at home is unable to offer that level of emotional support to them and accept them no matter what they're doing or what happens to them. The good thing is that any adult can serve as that one person for a child who is struggling. We as early childhood educators have got the ability to be that one person who is supportive of a child no matter how they behave, no matter what happens with them. So we need to take advantage of that. It's an opportunity to change a child's life trajectory. So after we talk about building nurturing environments and relationships, we are going to move up to the green tier, which is targeted prevention. In Pyramid Plus approach, prevention is helping children learn specific social skills through systematic, evidence-based teaching practices. Children who have learned these skills are less likely to exhibit challenging behaviors and more likely to be successful in learning what they need to know. Basically, here's something that we really need to think about. If a child doesn't know how to read, we teach them. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we're going to teach them how to swim. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, That's the job of the teacher. We teach them how to multiply. If a child doesn't know how to drive, yes, we do teach them. Sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's a more formal teacher relationship, but somebody has to teach a child all the things they need to know to be a successful driver. However, if a child doesn't know how to behave, we teach, or do we punish them? So often, our automatic knee-jerk response is to punish, to take away a privilege, or to actually remove the child from a situation, or to take away something that's very important to them. It can even involve physical punishment. The question is, why can't we finish that last sentence as automatically as we do all of the others? Something to really think through. Teachable moments are an important thing for us to be very aware of. We want to be sure that we're embedding teachable moments during every part of our day. Every routine, every transition, every activity that we do during our day. As we climb the pyramid, we will come up with a whole lot of strategies that we can embed in those teachable moments. So we can work on this when we talk about the effective workforce, the first tier. And we can definitely make use of it in the second tier when we are talking about the universal practices. The third tier, however, is the best time to identify those teachable moments and figure out what strategies we are going to be using. However, when we reach the top of the pyramid, that's not the time to be thinking about this. We should have been implementing this during the lower tiers of the pyramid, when we were trying to provide universal supports, when we're trying to make sure that we are targeting certain social emotional skills to very intentionally teach children. Not when we get to the top part of the pyramid where we're trying to put together a plan for intervening with a child who hasn't responded to any of the other strategies that we try. So again, we do not want to be trying to embed teaching practices at that point. We should have been doing it all along. It is less likely to be successful when we're in just the second tier, because at that point we are just beginning to build those relationships with the children. Part of taking advantage of those teachable moments is to create some planned social opportunities in our classrooms. We want to make routines into opportunities for social encounters and practicing skills. For example, in Montessori settings, children are specifically taught how to introduce a new classmate to their friends and how to greet a visitor to the classroom. You have to start thinking in terms of creating those social opportunities throughout your day. One thing that we know is that friendship is a very important skill for a child to have. Making friends can be learned with adult facilitation and support. Children are not born necessarily understanding how to be a friend or how to make a friend. In session 13, you're going to be learning lots of strategies to help children do just this. In session 14, we're going to be talking more about providing a strong foundation in emotional literacy for our children. Because we know that children who are emotionally literate do all these things. They tolerate frustration better. They don't get into as many fights. They engage in less self-destructive behavior. And overall, they are healthier, less lonely, less impulsive, more focused, and have higher academic achievement. So once we've used all of these other strategies, we've provided all of those universal supports, we have provided some very intentional opportunities for children to develop skills. We are still going to have a few children that still are exhibiting challenging behaviors, no matter what of all of the other supports we have put in place. So the last 3 sessions address how to help these children with more persistent behaviors. These children often need very individualized approaches, and their interventions need to involve all of the adults in their lives. So we are going to learn all kinds of new things when we get to the top of the pyramid. We're going to talk about functional behavior analysis. In other words, figuring out why children do the things they do. We're also going to experience developing a positive behavior support plan, which is that individualized approach to helping children stop exhibiting those challenging behaviors. So handout 1.15 is on page 57, and handout 1.16 is the glossary of the terms that you are going to hear over and over again during this training. So those are the 2 handouts that you may want to refer back to if you don't understand some of the terminology that we use. So here's our major messages for this session. Pyramid Plus is a state-funded, not-for-profit organization that until very recently was housed at the University of Colorado at Denver and is now a part of Healthy Child Care Colorado. The focus of the work is a statewide scale-up and sustainability effort that promotes social emotional competence for all children. And finally, the Pyramid Plus training includes the content and framework of the pyramid model and embeds other evidence-based practices to support inclusion. Now you need to pull out handout 1.17, page 65 in your handouts, and complete this reflective activity. You will be completing thought seeds at the end of each one of the sessions in the Pyramid Plus approach. This is an opportunity for you to take a few moments and reflect on what you've learned and how you might be able to actually apply it to your work. Finally, please open up your Google Doc and answer question 5. What did you learn from this session and what could be improved? Thank you very much for your attention.